This is how to paint a car. That car. The first thing that we started doing is we got airplane stripper, which you can get at Home Depot or whatever, and you just paint it onto the actual paint, but you have to mask off the sides and stuff, otherwise it'll drip underneath and then get to, say, the underside of the hood and then strip off the paint, and then that's just going to be more work for you trying to fix that. And if you cover it, it works a lot better and doesn't dry up. But you'll see the way that I painted it on, the brush was way too vertical, and you don't get that much of the paint stripper onto the surface when you're painting it like that. But if you put the brush at a really shallow angle, then it gets a lot more of the stripper on, and then you can do just one coat instead of, I think we did like 3 coats on this. And you see how easy that comes off with the paint stripper, as opposed to if you decide to sand it or something, then the dust gets everywhere and it just takes forever. But you don't have to bring it down to bare metal every time you paint. If you have good paint that the paint isn't chipping off anywhere, you can just sand it and then paint over that. But if you have a lot of paint chipping off like I did, you can sand it down to base coat or anything, but the best result is going to be if you start from bare metal. We wiped it down with lacquer thinner. The bottle says to wipe it down with water, but that's bare metal and I don't want to start oxidizing it. So then you peel off the tape, and with a scraper just get all the paint off the edges, because the paint's going to be a lot softer now because the paint stripper will soak through the tape a little bit, but not enough so that it gets drips onto the other side. When you're doing it on a flat surface like this, there you can see that I'm using the less aggressive angle on the paintbrush, but it helps to have someone putting the plastic up so that it doesn't drip down. And there is a special kind of paint stripper when you're doing it on bumpers and plastics, but we didn't have that kind of paint stripper, and we tried another kind that my dad had laying around, but it was still too strong and it started to weaken the bumpers, so we ended up just sanding it. So once that you have all of your paint off, then you go ahead and sand the entire surface and make sure that you get all the paint off of the edges, including the actual edge, because the edge will be rough, and then once you paint over that, then that texture is going to show through to the nice shiny paint. And you do need to sand the entire surface so that the paint has something to stick to. My dad's going around and getting the actual edges with just sand, like hand sanding. I think we used 400 or 600 for this. That was 600. And the more stuff that you take off, just trim pieces and all the rubber and whatnot, it's gonna turn out better, and then it's easier to mask also. If you look at a lot of home done paint jobs, there'll still be paint on the very edge of all the rubber pieces, but if you just take the extra half an hour to take everything off, then you don't have to deal with it.
This love that you never started, you once destroyed a broken heart that was already shattered, holding on to what we have.
Right there is where we started to find that the car had been in an accident at some point. We noticed that that right front fender was not an original fender. It still had the, when you buy a fender, that weird black primer that's really mediocre. But then you see all the Bondo on the door there and stuff. But oh, right here I used a suction cup to get a dent out, and it worked pretty well. But the way that you get most dents out is you get one of the Harbor Freight dent remover kits, and you put one of the pieces of metal that matches the inside, that matches the shape that you're trying to get back, and then you hammer around the dent, and it's one of those things that you just kind of got to get a feel for. There's a better picture of showing the previous damage that was very poorly repaired. They didn't even try to get the dent out. It looks like they just put a solid inch of Bondo. So we tried to get the dent out as well as we could, and we did pretty well. So I want to show you what we have set up for the paint thing. Is we have this bucket of cold water, and when the compressor is compressing air, then it gets really hot. So then it comes out of the lines and cools down in the blue line, and by the time it gets to the gun, then any water vapor that was in the air condenses, and then it's spraying water out of the gun. And you just don't want that. So what we have here is one of the little water filters, but most people just put it on there, but then it gets hot and it doesn't do anything. So we have the line go into the bucket of cold water, it cools it down, condenses it, then this grabs all the water, and then we have clean air. So we're using this cleaner stuff that we got from the paint store, and the way that it was explained to us to do it is you get the rag wet and then you use a new side of the rag for every swipe that you do. But we kind of had problems with that, of where it was getting fish-eyed, where the paint wouldn't stick to the metal right. So later on we did it where we soaked one rag and wiped everything and followed it with a dry rag and wiped off all the cleaner. And the paint, this primer that we used, was just not flowing well at all, because we didn't have any of the, I think you used a set of acetone to thin it down, and we don't have any, so. And once you start doing actual body work, once the dents are almost all out, it's another one of those things that you just kind of have to do and figure out. But tip is that the dent is almost always going to be bigger than you think it is. So you have to put Bondo or body filler that isn't Bondo, because Bondo isn't actually that great. But you put it where the dent is, and put it out around where the dent is too, because you're going to need that. And you just keep sanding till everything is smooth. if you didn't know, we're using a sanding block, which is just a rubber block that you put sandpaper on, and then it's a flat surface so that you can blend everything together. Instead of hand sanding, you just never would be able to get it to go smooth. Here we paint on a brown primer, and then that just kind of helps us differentiate between different layers as we do more blocking to get everything smooth. Blocking and sanding with the sanding blocks. And all the primer coats is all just going to be practice for when you paint the actual base coat and clear coat. And if you're getting, while it's drying, the spots that you got heavier are going to take longer to dry, so then you can kind of tell how well you're doing. That black stuff we put on is called a tracer coat, and that black will stay behind in dents that you can't really see, so then you'll know where all the dents are, and if they're really bad, then you put body filler. But sometimes if it's a very non-aggressive dent, it'll come out with the more layers of primer and sanding. And the high spots will show up in the gray that we did. And we're doing a wet sand, and it just kind of keeps all the primer from clogging up the sandpaper and makes your sandpaper last a lot longer. So you see that black spot in the center of the front bumper? My dad's going to put body filler right there because that's a low spot. That's for an example. And the more times that you primer and sand and primer and sand and primer and sand, the better that it's going to turn out. Just a lot smoother. And there is a body filler for bumpers and plastic too that's more flexible. And we didn't have that, so we used a body filler. And if I hit something, it will probably crack and I'll have to redo it. So right now with the brown primer, I'm just hitting all the low spots first, and then we're going to go over it again with the white primer. This white primer is where I started to get it to actually flow out and look how it should when it's drying, especially on the side that you can't see. So just take my word for it. And then this is after we finish blocking with that layer of primer. And all the plastic pieces, we used a plastic adhesion promoter, and that was just on the instructions with the primer that we got. So here we start building the paint booth out of 2x4s and big plastic sheets. And if you're going to do it like this, make sure you measure the space between the ceiling and the floor at more than just the two ends, because sometimes the ceiling or floor will be bowed a little bit. And you'll see when we set up this wall, it's kind of not at 90 degrees, it has a little bit of a slant, and that's because it was improperly measured. We're putting it together with a nail gun and then just staples to hold the plastic on. And you'll see me go with a leaf blower and just keep cleaning stuff. And you want to be cleaning and cleaning and cleaning the paint booth, because any dirt that's in there is just going to go into your paint. Got filters, we got lights, we got cars. There's more lights over there, but you can't see them because they're not on. And then we got that sucking air outside. So we did a final sealer before we did the base coat, which is important to have a solid color to put the base coat on, because any color differences will show up through the base coat a little bit and it just will be kind of patchy and a bit funky. But you want to make sure that you wipe down everything in the paint booth. Just clean as much as you can. Make sure you're wearing clean clothes. Clean the area outside of the paint booth so that you don't bring anything when you come into it. The more that you clean, the less dirt you're going to get in your paint. You want to get on as much paint as possible, just really flow it out without getting any drips. Which we did get a couple of drips, and you can fix them with a razor blade and sandpaper. And you just kind of scratch off the high spot with the razor blade being 90 degrees to the surface. And if you want, you can put tape on the edges so that it doesn't scratch around where the drip is. Cleaned in between the different coats that we did just to get rid of any of the overspray on the ground. There we used a laser to line up the tape to do the stripes. So here we started spraying the clear, but what you don't see is that on that plastic, all the different paint layers had kind of built up, and then when the air from the paint gun hit it, all of those paint layers would flake off and into the clear coat. so we had to take a whole another day to go and wet sand the entire clear coat and then clear coat again. And you want to put 2 or 3 coats of clear coat, and we did the equivalent of probably 3 coats. And when you do the wet sand in between the second and the last coat, or however many coats you do, it'll make it look a lot nicer with that last sprayed coat. It'll just be super smooth like that. So yeah, just keep the dirt out and paint the cars.